I've been walking, my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. See, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up.
Welcome to Friday Night Live. I'm your host, Catherine Carter. If you're tuned in right here, you're at the right place at the right time. Friday Night Live is a positive platform where we strive to inform, innovate, and inspire. And I want to send a special shout out and thank you to all of my Facebook and my YouTube viewers. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I know we normally have music, artists that we spotlight today, but with the climate of what's going on right now in our nation, I think it's a good idea to pause just for at least one Friday and talk about some things. So as I prepare for this show, my heart has been really heavy. How do you encourage people with all of the current devastation going on, taking place right now? I began to reflect on my childhood, and I thought about my father and growing up as a Black girl on the south side of Chicago. I thought about how we used to sit down at dinner together at the table as a family. And I remember when we got ready to move, my mom found liver and peas and carrots and all the nasty stuff that kids don't like behind the stove. And anybody that knows my mom, you all ask her. Anyway, I thought about having to be in the house when the street lights came on. I bet I had my tail back in the house. And so when I thought about it, I could not recall where I actually had to come and to contact with in-your-face racism. I was fortunate as a child that my parents were able to shield my sisters and I from all of the prejudices and the hate that spewed in the streets of the city. I was also fortunate to go to a historically Black college to get my undergraduate degree, and I really don't remember experiencing any racism there. However, when I decided to move to Houston, Texas, and then later in the southern part of Illinois, that is when I experienced the in-your-face racism. That is when I realized that the atmosphere and where I was you do not belong here. Mr. George Floyd, he did not deserve that. The 25-year-old young Black male that was running and jogging in broad daylight, he did not deserve that. Breonna Taylor, who was in her own home that was shot and killed, she did not deserve that. Actually, nobody deserves that. And because of that, I stand with the countless people out here now that are using their voice, making their voice be heard, trying to promote change, saying, not on my watch. So what I want you to do tonight, and I never hardly even asked you to do this, but I want you to share this live feed, not because I'm trying to get likes, because it's much deeper than that. It's because there's a nation that is in pain, frustrated, and hurting. Tonight, I have some awesome gentlemen from 3 different generations. And we're going to hear from them today. And hopefully, before this show is over with, even though it's an hour, I know we can't solve everything in an hour, but just for an hour, let's talk about it. So I want you to leave your comments, and also you're welcome to ask questions through the comments, and I will try my best to ask the guests the questions that you ask. Also, I want to let you know we are also going to still be giving away, we always give away gifts on Friday. Today, we're giving away two $15 Walmart gift cards. The gifts are going to be selected randomly through the comments, so leave your comments. My first guest went to high school at Chicago International Charter School and graduated valedictorian of class 2016. He has a passion for activism and a goal to unify humanity. He is a graduate of the class of 2020 and earned his Bachelor of Science in Marketing at Central State University. During his time at Central State, he held several different leadership positions, including but not limited to the sophomore class president and Mr. College of Business. His social justice aspirations came as a result of becoming a member of Operation Push in 2015 under the leadership of civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. He is also an associate minister at Mount Joy Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago under the leadership of his spiritual father, Reverend Dr. Howard Randolph. Please welcome to the show one of our young rising leaders in the city of Chicago, Minister Cameron Barnes. Hey!
It's so good to be with you, Lady
Cameron!
Casey. What's the word? How are you?
I'm doing good. And I just want to let you know before we get started, I am extremely proud of your accomplishments. And it has been an honor to watch you as a young man and see all of the awesome things that you are doing. And I know you're just beginning. So I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Glory to God. It's really
I
all I can say.
know. So, how long have you been a minister, and what is your vision for your generation?
So technically, I guess the technical answer would be 3 years. This year will be 3 years. I preached my first sermon on June the 11th, 2017. And I remember accepting my calling in October of 2016, shortly after I went for my first year at Central State. And I had a calling for a long time, for years and years, and I knew it. But I felt like I told the Lord, I was like, I'm too young. They're not going to listen.
But you're running. You were running.
I was running, and I was like, come on. They're not going to listen to me, you know. And so, but finally in 2016, the Lord said, look, we ain't going to wait no longer. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I've been a minister for 3 years. And so my vision for my generation is to become informed and to become civically and socially and politically informed and active, because this is no longer the fight of our grandparents and our parents and the fight of those who came before us, but we got to get in the thick of it. And I mean, we as in my peers and even some of those who are coming along, even behind me, still in high school and things. So my vision for us is to be able to move forward informatively and do things tactical and strategic and not do things spur of the moment.
So your mentor, one of your mentors is the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. How is it to work with him? That is like so awesome. What an awesome opportunity.
You know, I am still in awe every single time I'm even with him. You know, it's been years at this point, 5 years. But even if every time I'm still in his presence, I still look at him like, wow, you're Jesse Jackson.
And I'm here with you. Oh my goodness.
You know, and we may be riding around the city or even sometime out to eat or in some other state or something. And I'm just kind of like, how did I end up here? How did this happen to me? But I remember in 2015, my aunt took me down the Rainbow Push Coalition to take part in a college tour.
What does PUSH stand for?
So PUSH started off as People United to Save Humanity. And then later in the years, we realized that we as humans cannot save humanity ourselves. So it later changed to People United to Serve Humanity. And so Rainbow Push Coalition is a merger between Operation Breadbasket and the Rainbow Coalition, Operation Push rather, and the Rainbow Coalition from Reverend Jackson's 1984 and 88 campaigns for president. And so then he merged those together and made that. But I ended up at Push to go on an HBCU tour. And I realized while I was in high school that he was so accessible and that there was a wealth of knowledge right there in Hyde Park. And I was on the South Side too. So I said, every Saturday in high school, I got up and went to push. And eventually, I was consistent. I was loyal. I was there. Whatever needed to be done, I would do. And Reverend Jackson and I took to each other. And then, of course, when I went away to college, I pledged the same fraternity. And I mean, it's just been.
And the rest is history.
So to say.
So, Cameron, there's a lot going on in the nation right now. And I know you're in your 20s. And I have been just to be honest, I've had to kind of just back away from it's just too much. There's just been so many emotions and I've been really having a hard time. But you're in your 20s. Breonna Taylor, that got killed in March, she would have been 27, I believe, today.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ahmaud Arbery, which was the young man that was jogging,
mm-hmm.
he was 25.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and since you're in your 20s and you're a young African man, what are your feelings on the police and how they have been treating the African American brothers and sisters?
It's heartbreaking, as you say, and it's becoming. This is one of the worst cases to me. I mean, we grew up in kind of this Trayvon Martin era because that was when we were children when that happened, and now we've grown up under Tamir Rice and Mike Brown and Philando Castile and Sandra Bland and all of the names that have gone unsaid. So constantly we are reminded of this excessive force and this abuse of power. And so my feeling toward it would be just like anyone else's. At this point, I'm fed up, and but I'm so intrigued as to what is it. After 22 years, I look and I tell myself my skin color never did anything to anybody.
Right.
So what is it that intimidates someone who has on 40 or 60 pounds of armor? What is it that intimidates someone who has firearms and we're, weaponless and everything? It's intriguing to me and just baffling to me as to why this is going on like this. And I wish that I had an answer, but unfortunately, we live in a hard reality that if you're Black and you're dealing with police, you have to be taught how to be mild-mannered and to be calm and to not move suddenly. And, you got to let them know I'm going over here to reach for this and everything. And I just think that America, the police in America are just indebted to the Black community because they have caused so much hurt, so much trauma that is on their hands. It's on their hands.
So, I'm originally from Chicago. I don't live there anymore, but I still have my mom there. I have aunts and uncles and cousins, and a lot of my immediate family are still there. And I saw where there was a lot of looting and destruction of property. And I'm all for protesting, but I didn't know how to feel about the looting and destroying of the businesses and stuff. What are your views on the looting and the destruction that has been going on in Chicago? And is it still going on, or has it kind of calmed down a little bit?
I will first say that it has kind of calmed down a little bit. We are still living in the effects of it in that a lot of our businesses are closed. We now live in some food deserts, medicine deserts, essential need deserts because these pharmacies and these stores are still closed. But the looting itself has kind of calmed down. I think it's pretty much come to a cease. But when you say you don't know how to feel about it, I was the same way when it was downtown, when it was in predominantly Caucasian neighborhoods. And I don't mean to say that we should destroy white people's communities. And I don't think the looting was necessary at all. But what I do think that it will cause a larger response in those communities, because fact is fact. And the fact is law enforcement and government respond more quickly to those wealthier neighborhoods. But when it began to permeate into the Black community, this is when we moved from a protest to a manipulation of a moment that was supposed to be grieving a nation and that we were supposed to be making a statement. It was overshadowed by selfishness and one's own egotistical gain, because you can't say Black Lives Matter and ruin the livelihood of another Black life. So we know that they were not doing that because in the name of Black Lives Matter. They were doing
Right.
that because the police are not looking, and we got a chance now to get what we couldn't afford when the store was open anyway, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a manipulation of a moment that should have never gone that far. And I think that that's what happens when we make movements spur of the moment and we fail to strategize and we fail to plan and be tactical in what we're going to do. When you do something spur of the moment, then you end up where you never intended to be.
Awesome. So, is the National Guard there? Or do you see military presence or?
I have not seen military presence myself, and I know that our governor, Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot, have both been very vocal about not bringing military assistance into the state of Illinois, and particularly the city of Chicago, despite the president's orders. But I myself have not seen any military action firsthand.
Okay. What are some suggestions that you can, or what do you think we need to do as a people to move forward or to bring about change?
One of the things that I loved the most when I pledged Omega Psi Phi was one of their mandated programs, and that is voter registration, education, and mobilization. And I took to that program the most because I think that as a people, we have a very large margin of votes. Black people are usually the backbone of every election. And I think if we were to organize amongst ourselves and identify our strong and prudent young leaders within our communities and urge them to run for office. And I know that our Black boys want to be rappers and ball players and some of the things of the like, but I think that we ought to be able to glorify some more careers that bring about change. And then we need to create a coalition of Black voters that go around and vote in these elections. And if there's a young Black prudent leader that's running here, we need to vote in this district and make sure he gets elected or she gets elected over here. And we need to infiltrate the government with Black, prudent, young, smart minds that are going to be at the table, that are going to not be scared to speak up, that are going to speak truth to power by any means necessary. And I really believe that the elections and that the voting process is going to pull us out of this, because we can't keep begging the people who brought us over here to be less than in the first place to make us more than what they expected us to be. We have to go in and do it ourselves. So we need prudent leaders out of our communities to run for office, become an elected official, become alderman, commissioner, city councilman, everything from state, local, and federal levels. We need representation.
Yeah. So I'm going to allow you to give some special shout outs. I know there are a lot of people that are present in your life that have helped you along the way, or so I don't know how long the list is, but go ahead and give your shout outs.
I will first, of course, shout out to God. Thank you, Lord. Glory to God always. My mother and my father, who were very instrumental, and my aunt. My mother, my father, and my aunt Denise were all very instrumental in my going to Push. My aunt Denise introduced me to Push, and my mother and my father would get up on Saturday and drive me back and forth before I was able to drive myself to Push. And that's what really got my foot in the door for social justice. Certainly want to give a shout out to the Rainbow Push Coalition, my mentor, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., and certainly my other mentor, Reverend Jeanette Wilson. And then last but certainly not least is the Reverend Dr. Howard Randolph. You know, I really feel like I would not be who I am, the minister that I am, the person that I am, the giving person, without Dr. Howard Randolph, First Lady Patricia Randolph, and the New Faith family. Between New Faith and Push, those are the people that define me, and those are the people who keep me going outside of my family. So I thank God for those people. Please forgive me if I didn't mention anyone else's name, but I don't want to
charge it to your head and not to your heart.
Yes, charge it to my head, Lord. And shout out to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you
for even thinking that some little Black boy from Chicago like me was worthy enough. To be on your show.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you would see in me something bright. So I'm grateful for you, Lady KC.
You're very welcome. Hold on a second. Cheryl, are there any questions on there for Cameron? Do you see any questions or comments?
Gigi has a question.
There's a question, Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any Black think tank groups already established nationwide, and can we identify them?
That I know of, I'm not sure that there are any Black think tank groups, but I think that is a wonderful thing to do. I'm more so concerned about a coalition of people who are election watchers and just making sure that folks are registered to vote and they are going to vote in these elections. If you have to mobilize people, if you got to take people to vote, we need a coalition of folks who focus on these elections and make sure that our voices are heard. I want to say that in the last election we had in Chicago, March 17th, we have something about, don't quote me on it, but about 1.5 million registered voters in the city. And about 1.2 million of those voters stayed home and did not vote in this previous election. And we have to do something about that because we cannot cry about leadership and not come out. We can't do it.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments for Cameron on there?
Not at this time.
Okay, Cameron, I'm going to allow you to give some final words of encouragement. We have some viewers this is kind of hard. It's a hard thing to swallow. Can you give some encouraging words? It doesn't matter how long. I'm gonna let the screen go full for him so he can talk because I know he got a lot to say.
When I was thinking about this, I think of two passages of scripture. One certainly is pertaining to a sermon that I preached in August of 2019 entitled "Don't Get Too Ripe," and it was about Amos chapter 8 when God had showed Amos several visions. And he was telling Amos that the time of judgment was coming on his people of Israel. And Amos kept going to God, telling him no. When he would show him the vision and how he would do what he would do to the people, Amos would go back to God and say, no, Lord, spare them. And the Lord would spare them. And he'd show him another vision, and the Lord would spare him again. But it got to a point where he showed him a vision of ripened summer fruit. And he said, at this point, I cannot no longer spare them. And he says, what I'm going to do is cause a famine. It won't be a famine of bread and thirst, but it would be a famine of God's word. And so he says, you will look, if you read Amos chapter 8, he says, you will look as far as the east is to the west. They will search far and near, and they won't be able to find God's word. And so I would let folks know in this time, this is certainly not a time for us to get too ripe in our walk with the Lord. This is not a time for us to get too ripe, metaphorically speaking, of course, because God will snatch his word. And in times like these, we need a word from the Lord, nobody else, because the president is not going to give us a word. World leaders are not going to give us a word. We need a word from the Lord. And so in these times, we must be careful to not have the Lord snatch his word from us. And so we must remain vigilant and remain prayerful and pray without ceasing. We have to put on the whole armor of God and not be ripe in this season. Not only that, he says he has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. You need to know that you have a sound mind. And so you need to take heed to the CDC. And I know that churches are eager to get back to worship, and we're eager to crowd again. But he said that he's given us a sound mind. And if the CDC is telling us that we must take proper precautions to live, you can't say God is going to keep me if I disobey. No, he's giving you a sound mind, and your mind needs to work. He says, let this mind be in you that is in Christ Jesus. And he said, I gave you a sound mind. And so you need to listen to those who are experts in the area. So other than that, keep God first. Keep praying, saints. And, keep God first. Let me tell you something. The Lord is never going to fail. Ever.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Kevin. I know that you have other places you could have been or been doing on Friday at 7:00, but I just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and hang out with me just for a little while and encourage the viewers. Love you, Cameron.
I love
Best
you more.
wishes in all your endeavors, and we got to do this again soon.
Thank you so much. Anytime you call, I'm going to answer.
All right. You take care.
You too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
alongside with Pastor Matt, his lovely wife, Elder Leslie Lee, also teaches financial accountability. And Pastor Matt, his sermons, they chip at the very root of at the very view, excuse me, of the very root, edifying the body and changing lives. Please welcome Pastor Matt of Memphis Metro, bringing you ministry at the speed of life. Hi, Pastor Matt. How are you?
Hey, Kathy, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know that you're very busy. You have a very strict schedule. I really appreciate you taking time out to hang out with me today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm honored to serve on this platform. So thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. How long have you been a minister, or how long have you been in ministry?
You're trying to tell everybody how old I am. I'm getting to be one of the old heads of ministry now. I've been at this for a little better than almost 25 years. So called into ministry at a young age, and essentially found myself in a place where I felt like I had to do the will of God, or otherwise he was going to put me in some very difficult conditions and circumstances. So I know what it feels like to want to run, but
Oh yeah.
when his hand is on you, you tend to go with where he leads you. So
Yeah, my former guest, he was saying the same thing about he heard the voice when he was running, and yeah. Okay, so I was trying to give a little bit of background about Memphis Metro Church. Did I leave anything out that you want to add? I know that you do also have the Saturday night setup. Tell me a little bit about that, and like where I know you're on the radio and TV, where people can turn in.
Well, we started a platform over the course of this time that we were dealing with the coronavirus pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially it was just another outlet for us to give expression of ministry. And our goal was to bend the ministry towards a younger demographic and try to appeal to them in their places of thought and concept, and essentially try to create conversation, dialogue, connection to generations across the board, but more specifically to young people, so they could feel included in this process of helping us to discover how to manage the world in which we live by doing ministry and trying to do it effectively. And so at Memphis Metro, we always say that we're about fellowship, leadership, and worship. So those three areas, once they are identified in the context of a person's life, we believe that because of the right relationships, because you learn how to serve, because we get in the presence of God, those things can change and alter your trajectory in life. And so we encourage people to identify the right relationships, find ways to serve through those relationships, and all of that draws you closer to God at the end of the day. So that's the premise of Memphis Metro. The Saturday night setup is designed to do the same thing.
Okay.
So I've got such a tremendous team around me that helps make all of it happen. So I'm so appreciative of the membership and the partners and those who are working behind the scenes and make the things that happen. And so they really have been a great support to me.
Okay. Pastor Matt, I really wanted to invite you onto the show because I got a chance to watch your sermonette, Race Matters. And actually, viewers, I actually shared it to my Friday Night Live page on Facebook if you all want to see the whole sermonette.
Wow.
But I wanted to, if you didn't mind, to discuss the sermonette and the perspective on the necessity to confront divisions that should not infiltrate the kingdom of God.
Well, the thing is that, and I appreciate you doing that, sharing it on your platform. That means a great deal to me. Part of the frustration of the moment is that we have felt, particularly as African Americans and people that have bought into this idea of what America and democracy and liberty are supposed to be. Really, this is supposed to be a representation of what the kingdom of God is like. And so the country was built on these Christian principles. The country was built upon the whole idea that there can be equality and justice. And so on last Monday, a man was killed for what they believe to be something counterfeit. The real question is that who's been handed the counterfeit thing? Was it the store or was it African Americans? I believe that we've been given something counterfeit. And so we have this concept that we believe in, this concept that we've been abiding to, this concept that we've had confidence in. And the objective of the message was to simply show with just t-shirts, a black one and a white one, that because of the color, the black one gets treated differently. Because of the concept that's in the mind, not of the designer, but the beholder, that beholder has some quote unquote legitimate right to devalue one of the t-shirts based on its color. And so that's essentially what's happened in America. Our designer and the value that he has placed on us has not been properly evaluated or esteemed by the beholder. And so often we get this counterfeit that's been handed to us, and we're asked to accept it like it's real, like it's something that's supposed to be manifested in our lives: freedom, democracy, equality. And we are shortchanged on this on a regular basis. So the message was designed to confront particularly white evangelicals. And one of the things that I'm asking for is for the leaders of all of the major denominations, particularly the white ones, to come out and speak against this whole notion of how we have been treated in this country, and to talk about racism and injustice and make it part of their platform. Black people aren't the only ones who are responsible for dismantling racism. We need the voice, contribution, dollars, energy, and effort to come from those who have benefited from systemic racism. And so often that is very much the American westernized church.
So I know I heard through the grapevine that you did a talk or a discussion about Rodney King and the incident that happened in March 1991.
Yeah.
With all that has transpired in our nation these last few weeks, can you give us your views and feelings about, as an African American male living in the United States?
Well, one of the things that hit me so hard about last week was George Floyd was 46 years old. I have the blessed privilege of being able to turn 47 next week. And so to see that man, the same age as I am, having kids and having family that loves him, it just put all of this in perspective. And the reality is, whether it has been videotaped or not, African Americans have suffered that reality every day. And so unfortunately, it took something to be captured through a recording device for it to become real to us. But there's never been a day in American history where African Americans have not been mistreated somewhere in this country. And so my thoughts took me back to 1992 when I was a college freshman, and I was leaving Atlanta to come to Memphis. I'm coming home to check on an internship, and Atlanta was in the midst of riots, and I was leaving, and I felt like I was missing out on an opportunity, but God was at the same time calling me to do something for the kingdom. And part of the responsibility, I feel, has been to serve as some of the conscience as it relates to race relations in the church. Because if it's not right in America, it certainly can't be right in the kingdom. And so the kingdom essentially says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is. And so we have to have that responsibility and urgency to bring about the whole notion of what the kingdom looks like into this earth realm. And so the church has to be at the forefront of that, particularly those who have been at the forefront. And so silence has to be done away with. And so too often we've seen our white counterparts not say anything. And that is destructive. Silence in this moment is destructive. And so we need the voice of those to participate who have been part of the oppressive system to start helping us to dismantle this at another level.
What do you feel we can do as a people to promote change and move forward?
Well, I did hear your guest earlier, and he talked about
Cameron. Mm-hmm.
the dynamic of getting involved with regard to some basic things, voter registration. Those kinds of things are important. Where the church is concerned, the church does need to have some policies across the board, across the denominations that help us to address this. And so we've opened up our platform to white pastors in particular to have the conversation about race. And the truth is, it's not one conversation, it's an ongoing conversation. It has to be something that we talk about. If racism is woven into the fabric of America, we have to talk about this in our pulpits. Unfortunately, in suburban America, we got white people getting together and not addressing this issue. And so 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is still the most segregated hour in America. And so I have friends of mine who are pastors, white and black, and some of them know the comfort and convenience of being able to do suburban ministry that only puts them casually in contact with this kind of dynamic. But we cannot afford for this to be casual anymore. It has to be intentional. And if we don't create the intersections, we'll keep repeating this cycle. And so this behavior to me, white people will look at it and say, okay, black people are rioting or looting or they're protesting again, and they'll treat it like it's like a cycle. But this is something that we confront every day as black people. We confront these kinds of issues. We confront racism on a daily basis. The boardroom, the classroom, it doesn't matter. The examination room, we face it on all fronts. And we have to dismantle that. And the church has to be at the forefront of the discussion and at the vanguard of the fight if we're going to get past any of this.
Okay. Are there anybody leave any questions for Pastor Matt on there?
No questions.
Just comments?
Just comments.
Okay,
Yeah.
there are no questions, there's some comments. Would you like to give any shout outs to anybody? I know you have some people in your life that have inspired you along your journey as a minister or just in your life in general. Give a couple of shout outs. Don't forget Leslie because you get in trouble.
Well, you got it already. You got it. They're sitting in the next room, she and my daughter, and they're listening and supporting and watching.
Hi, Leslie. Hi, Carissa.
So we're grateful. I'm grateful for my family and my siblings who support the ministry. Karen, Renee, and Mark, they have all been assets. My parents who support the ministry, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do it with family, but we've got so many other team members that help us make it such a warm and loving place. And so I'm grateful for all of the Memphis Metro partners and team that make it happen on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. We wouldn't be here without them. So I want to thank them. Okay. And thank you.
Thank you. Y'all gonna make me cry. I'm already having a hard time with this. Thank you so much, Pastor Matt. Thank you.
It's my privilege. Thanks so much.
So finally, can you give some final words of encouragement to the viewers? Put them on full screen.
I will. I'll just encourage us with the thought that Jesus told a parable about a man on the road who had been beat up and bruised and abandoned, and several different people walked by. The unlikely candidate was the Samaritan who came and served him. And Jesus was responding to a question. He said, the question was, who is my neighbor? And so our responsibility when we see people hurting, the poor, the disenfranchised, the marginalized, when we see a George Floyd and he represents a number of unnamed people, we got an obligation to respond to their hurt and to their pain. If we turn our face the other way, if we cross the road, go to the other side and ignore what's happening, we have not done the will of God. We have participated in the loss of a soul. And so the Samaritan took care of him, put him on his donkey and put him in a hotel and took care of his needs. I think we have to find ourselves looking for ways to uplift those who have been broken, hurt, abandoned. Find ways of elevating them and taking care of them, because those are our neighbors. And so I encourage our audience tonight to find ways to motivate yourself to look the right way, not the opposite way. Look into the soul of people. We're not just lifting up symbols. We want to heal souls in this time. And so examine who your neighbor is. Your neighbor is needing you, asking for your help, looking for your contribution to elevate their life. And God has put his deposit in you in order for you to be able to do so. Thanks so much, Kat.
Thank you, Pastor Matt. It was great to see you, and thank you so much for spending your time on Friday night to encourage us this evening. Blessings to you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Is it going? Okay.
It was Freddie, Sam, Corey, Eric, Orlando, Ahmad, Steven, Kenneth, Amadou, Jonathan, Christian, Terrace, Sean. Killed him a day before his wedding. Jamal killed him while he was in handcuffs. Mike killed him while he had his hands up. Kamani, Ramali, Phillip, Alton. About 3 Kevins, about 2 Jordans. John, Laquan, Lathon, Stephon, Tony, Tamir, Elijah, Antoine, Isel, Terrell, Dauntre, Akai, George. For him, set the country on fire. Timothy, Patrick, Paul, Tyree, Quintonio, Darius, Jeremy, William, Anthony, Dante, Oscar, Kendrick, Keith, David, Walter, woman like Sandra, Betty, Rihanna, India, Michelle, Tatiana, Tanisha, Rika, Natasha, Pamela, Shannon, Megan, baby Ayan. All that we lost, your name live on. Wasn't killed by a cop, but I can't forget Trayvon. Can't forget Emmett, and all of those we lost to the beast. No justice, no peace.
My final guest is a retired educator with an educational career that spans more than 52 years. He takes pride in his community service and has received numerous awards and recognition. He is a recipient of, but not limited to, the NAACP Edwardsville President's Award, the NAACP Alton Education Award, the Metro East Award Professional Organization Educator Award, the 100 Black Men of Alton Living Legend Award. He received the Humanitarian Award, the Dr. Martin Luther King Humanitarian Award from Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. This is just to name a few. He's married to his beautiful wife, Carmen, and worships at the Mount Joy Missionary Baptist Church in Edwardsville, where he is a member of the Board of Trustees, church treasurer, and deacon. Please welcome a life member and president of the NAACP Edwardsville branch, Mr. John Cunningham. Hi, Mr. Cunningham.
Hello, Catherine. I appreciate it.
I've been working trying to find everything about you.
Oh, yeah. You had a fine panel in front of me. They said so much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Um, some of the people that are watching, and there may be some young people that are watching, just because you're African American, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a member of the NAACP. So just before we really get started, can you give us a brief overview of the NAACP, its mission, and why did you decide to become a member?
You know, in the reference to time, let me say the NAACP is the oldest civil rights organization in the United States, representing minorities and especially African Americans. And our president is Derek Johnson at the national level, Teresa Haley at the state level. There are 5 branches in the Edwardsville area, 1 in O'Fallon, 1 in East St. Louis, Madison, Alton, and Edwardsville. And I got involved because I'm a sucker for giving service. And many of my dreams have been fulfilled by people who stepped away from their jobs and still continue to give service in the community. And so, you know, you can look up our history if you want to, but let's get into the show.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I see you ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, Mr. Cunningham, I know you have probably witnessed quite a bit in your lifetime, especially in the areas of racial inequality and police brutality towards African Americans. Can you share some of your experiences or what it was like when you were a young African American male compared to what we are dealing with now in 2020?
I think so. I'd like to say for us today, let's not get it twisted. We're talking about what recently happened. Police brutality is what it's called, but the real name for it is racism. This is just one of the acute symptoms of racism: murder, loss of life. But in saying that, I want to caution all of us to understand that we still need the police. And there are numerous policing bodies around us as we travel from one place to another, and they don't have national standards. And so it's our responsibility as citizens to get involved and put our voices in the room with them to help protect ourselves. And growing up, I was colored. Till I went to school, I found out I was a Negro. Then somebody looked at our hair and then we became Afro-Americans. And then we became African Americans, and then Black African Americans, and Black and not Hispanic. I've ridden on the bus. I've seen black and white bathrooms and water fountains. I've seen older gentlemen told to step aside for little white children. I've seen us holding our heads down. I've felt all the intimidation from the police that many of people do, being stopped or being approached. But I do know this thing about some of them: they're decent people, and they want to go home in the evening just like we do.
Yes.
But the biggest problem I've had with police is that their actions have been done in a manner where there has not been any accountability. So everybody who does a job needs some accountability and standards to keep them from abusing power. But again, we still need the police, so it behooves us to understand how to build relationships with them.
I have friends that are not African American, and I have had a few that have actually contacted me after all of this has transpired to express their distaste or not accepting what has happened, and really to console me as an African American of the things that we have to deal with. What do you like if there are non-African Americans that want to help in the cause? How can they help, or how can they? What are your views on that?
Look, let's be very clear. in my era when I was young, and that was in the 60s when I first started becoming active, we were in the streets by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the generation of adults, young adults now, have something I didn't have, and the people with me. They had relationships with Caucasian people and other people. I did not have that opportunity growing up. So when you get a relationship with somebody, you're able to sympathize and empathize with their plight.
Yes.
So today, your white sisters and brothers stand with you. They lead the marches just like we did back in the 60s. But those relationships, which is what make it possible to share things and talk about it. And then the other speakers were talking about having courageous conversations. Um, we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about race and religion, and we don't talk about shared opportunities. And those conversations have got to take place. They're taking place in a small way, but those are the type of challenges that we have to make. So you have to be cognitive of how to do things. And those relationships are invaluable. You wanted me to keep going in the
Yeah,
direction?
keep going. Yeah. You know what? Mr. Cunningham, we may go over an hour, which is fine. I'm not going to rush you. You just take your time and you say whatever you feel your views are.
Well, you know, the black kids out here today have been a friend to these white people from daycare
Mm-hmm.
all the way up into their adult lives. So they know something about each other. And the reason you haven't heard the NAACP's name being shouted in these marches and stuff like that, you see our presence there. Our national president tells us that in order to have a direct action, and that's what they call it, you have to have a clear goal and outcome. You have to make sure that you have a situation that does not threaten the health of the people that you're asking to be out there in the crowd, certainly at this time during this pandemic. And you have to have some planning and some training of the people that are going to be out there in the demonstration. And you have to know who's going to speak. And you know you got to have a beginning and an end, and you got to be prepared to deal with adverse circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the training comes in. Uh, you should know when the activity is going to end. You should know, be familiar with the area that you're protesting in, because you never know where trouble will come from, and you may have to flee.
Yes.
So the NAACP requires us, if we're going to brand a march or protest NAACP, that we have insurance. A lot of people don't know that all the sit-in marches and things like that, many of them, when property was destroyed, those merchants and politicians tried to attack the NAACP financially in the past. So while we tell our members that they encourage, if they want to participate in any activity they believe is pertinent, to go ahead and do it. So we're there, and you might understand this when I put it this way. There was Booker T and W.E. These guys had different philosophies, and everybody talk about one wanted us to be manually trained, the other one wanted us to be educated, trained, and they argue about which one of them was right. Both of them were right. We're not a monolithic people. We have different skills, and we need all of that in us as a people to be successful in our country. So you have to understand. Now, there was Malcolm and there was Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm talked about nationalism, Martin talked about integration. And you can see that the power turned to Martin. And he was able to work and institute policies and have laws passed that enabled us to come to where we are able to have people in better financial positions than they were at the time I was a child. And you have to understand we have a responsibility and a role too. I praise all the men who mentored me, who took time away from their family to accompany me on trips and take me places and show me things. So as an adult and aging, it's my responsibility to fill some of those shoes and mentor and encourage young people. So the strength, if you want to talk about a village to raise a child, well, you have to have people in the village willing to give service. That's one area that we as a people can improve in, giving service in our community. And as president of the NAACP, one of the goals that I came into this job with was trying to encourage the members of the NAACP to participate in the governance of their community. Don't just live in the community and think you're doing all right. Go to the school. If your child's in school, show up. You send your kid to the public schools because they claim Edwardsville got a good school district, and many of the parents haven't stepped foot in their child's school. We have a responsibility, and we can't pass it on. You need relationships in those schools with those teachers. They got to understand who you are, and if your child needs support, that you're willing to give it and work with them to see that your child receives the education that they should. Now, you have a question for me?
Well, I think you answered the next one. I was going to ask you, what do you think we can do as a people to move forward and promote positive change in the African American community? And you hit on a few topics there if you wanted to add something to what you've already said.
I told you about participating in the governance of our community, and some people might say, well, what does that mean? Okay. You heard every guy came on here before me said register to vote. But we register, but we don't vote. And that's one of the factors that caused this 2016 election to go the way it did. We put our hands in our pockets and we found reasons not to vote in our favor because we are one of the most uninformed groups of voters out there. We don't know who to vote for. We don't
Mr. Cunningham, some of the things that I heard from the young generation was that they didn't like any one of the candidates, so they weren't going to vote for either one of them, or their vote doesn't count because even though we vote, then the Electoral College, they can go and decide that, so it just doesn't count. What did you say about that? Because I was like, that's your voice. That's your, what do you say to that?
Easy. Experience keeps a good school. Because they decided not to vote.
Look what happened.
Yes. And we have to remind them of that. This game, political game, you need to understand what the conservative platform is. Most people can't articulate it. Most people don't even know how to become a citizen of the United States, and we are citizens and we live here. But we can't tell you how to become a citizen. And so that's why we see the immigrant problem. We don't have enough of us running for office.
One of the other guys said that. Yeah, he was saying that.
That's what I'm doing. At the local level, most of the things that affect your life happen at the local level. Congress usually does not pass laws that affect your everyday life directly. What affected us was those covenants in the communities that tell people not to sell us houses and And, you know, we're the ones not attending the local meetings. We're the ones not involved in city councils. We don't know what our city is doing. One of the things we've done with our branch is I have attempted to work with a group and say we need a deputy register in many of the local churches, so that we won't take the excuses away. You know, so you have to start thinking of how you're going to do that. You want to be represented. We talk about Black history. Okay, they give us the shortest month of the year, but what do we do with it? Our branch decided that we would sponsor Black History Month activities in our 10 elementary schools. And so we give the schools monies for library materials on Black history every year, and they put on, you know, an activity with the kids for Black History Month. And we're giving those education grants to the graduating seniors. This year, we couldn't have our Freedom Fund banquet, which is our only fundraiser. So I looked at our members. I say, don't we have enough resources to ensure out of our own pockets that the children that apply for an education grant will receive it? So we were able to give 6 $1,000 education grants to graduating seniors without having a banquet.
That's awesome.
So we got to think about not so much always what we don't have, but what we do have. What we do have, and do well with it. But again, I'm going to emphasize relationships. You know, people tell you if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so we don't even show up at school board meetings, city council meetings, city planning meetings, open to the public. And so we have got to give some service if we want to change things, and they will change. And that's what the NAACP is doing. After the marches, somebody have to sit down with these people who are in authority and come up with meaningful solutions to what we're concerned about. Somebody's going to have to sit down in almost every city to talk to the mayor and the chief of police and the district attorneys about their policing policies. That's where NAACP comes in.
Okay.
So you got to understand, after you do all that shouting and marching and bowing, you get up, and that's where action has to begin. After you've gotten their attention, do you realize this? In the 60s, it wasn't the death alone of Emmett Till, a child killed by hatred and racism, and we saw the people that did it walk away. But when the world saw those children being attacked by dogs, held by policemen in the water and the beatings, and so the NAACP and other organizations and committed people engaged the power to be, and were able to start moving in a positive direction. Well, what happened this time? Many people got killed before George Floyd, bless his heart and family. But when it went viral and the world saw it, we had to stop. In the middle of a pandemic, we had to stop and pay attention. And our hypocrisy, our country's hypocrisy, was laid bare to the world. And so now people are looking for systemic change in our policing. And I hope we can get it. I really do.
I do too. Does Mr. Cunningham have any questions on? There are a few questions for you, Mr. Cunningham.
What would you say to the men and women protesting across the country right now?
Can you hear
who in this very moment are subject to police brutality?
Well, we're not going to stop brutality overnight. So you have to understand, if you're out there, you've got to always be vigilant to protect yourself. Know when, plan your demonstrations so that when you've made your point, you take your people out of the way. Don't stay out there and linger and become a victim. And like I said, know the area. And if you have to move away from the general area, make sure you have an exit route thought out and stay out of harm's way. That's one of the most important things we have to do, and realize that there are people out there who are not out there looking to support the issue, but they're opportunists looking to take advantage of the crowd and destroy and break in buildings and hurt other folk. And your police force hasn't received the type of training always that enable them to act properly, as their everyday job is not protest crowd control. So you got to understand that. That's why when we do things like that, protesting, we find out who the police are, who's in charge. We try to make sure that we know some of them are out there because we ask them to be out there, and then people are more likely to not become as rowdy when we have those relationships, and know who's going to speak. Don't let anybody have the mic, because they may say something to infuriate the crowd in the wrong direction.
Right, right. What's the next question? Talk loud so he can hear.
Have either of the mayors from Edwardsville or Glen Carbon spoken out on the gracious protesters in Edwardsville at the courthouse?
You should have been able to read the comments of Mayor Hal Patton in the newspaper. Mayor Patton has reached out to me, asked me to be on a committee with him to start looking at some things that the city can do. I've been contacted by the police chief of Edwardsville, and he's asked me to work with him as well, looking at policing. I received a call from Mayor Jack Stack and Chief Link and Glen Carbon, and Chief Keevan is police chief. Glen Carbon has adopted the 10 principles of policing supported by the Illinois State Police and the NAACP. And Chief Keevan is in the near future is going to be bringing those principles. You can look them up on the website, the state website of policing. We've come a long way, although these mishaps keep occurring. Several years ago, we were trying to help everybody understand how to react when stopped by the police. Right? You might remember the talk.
I remember.
Yes, and so this is just moving more in that direction. When they become more familiar with us and we become more familiar with them, those relationships I was telling you about gonna help diffuse a lot of this, but it's not gonna go away. You heard the pastors talk about, when he alluded to my being a neighbor, a good Samaritan. Am I my brother's keeper? When Cain slew Abel, who is my neighbor? All these things, have some effect on our life.
Okay. Any other questions? Any more questions?
Not for Mr. Cunningham. No.
Okay, that's all of the questions, Mr. Cunningham. Finally, can you give some final words of encouragement to our viewers?
Yes, I was waiting on this moment.
Put on full screen.
We express ourselves a lot through our music. There are some songs that have been pivotal in my life. One is, and I suggest you guys listen to some of them over the weekend since we're sheltered in our home. Ball of Confusion by the Temptations. Put it on. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. Mercy, Mercy Me, the Ecology by Marvin Gaye. And if you would read Luke 21, 25 through 36, you'd find Purple Rain by Prince. It has a biblical connection. Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Wake Up, Everybody. And the song that moves me probably more than all of those other five is Love's in Need of Love by the great Stevie Wonder. And lastly, two movies that I think, if I had my way, I would show this movie to every Black person who claim they don't understand racism. It's the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. The star of the movie is the beautiful and gracious Miss Cicely Tyson. That movie tells a story of racism, of slavery and racism, and the fight for freedom. And the other movie, if you don't understand the welfare state, is Claudine, starring James Earl Jones and Diana Carroll. One of my hobbies is listening to music and old time radio, and you can tell I watch a lot of movies too. I wish you all well. This pandemic is real. It might not be real for the reasons that you're told. If you look at poor health, high blood pressure, and all those things they talk about, we're only 13% of the population. But one of the problems we have is that our jobs expose us to the public, the type of jobs that we have in the service community. So there are a lot of factors where we are getting affected, and it just isn't solely limited to our health habits, but we can improve our health habits. You Black men, we need to go to the doctor and get our needs taken care of. And I know we're going to come through this better than we are now today, because we're going to take the lead in talking to these officials and making positive suggestions of how the police can better work with us as citizens. Because I'm going to say it again, don't get it twisted. We need the police. We need the police, not to harass or abuse us, but to help govern the country by enforcing the laws that affect us every day in the proper manner. So thank you, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham, so very much. I really appreciate you coming on a Friday Night Live, hanging out with me for a little while, and encouraging the people. Thank you so much. And we got to do this again soon.
We do have another question.
Oh, wait a minute. We got one more question. Somebody came. Hold on.
They want you to please repeat the playlist and scripture.
Oh, okay. The song Ball of Confusion by the Temptations, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, Mercy, Mercy Me, The Ecology by Marvin Gaye, Purple Rain by Prince. That's Luke 21:25 through 36. Wake Up, Everybody, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Love's in Need of Love by Stevie Wonder. And the movies are the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman and Claudine, and you can get them on Netflix. And you might be able to get Claudine on, what is it? The app, the map that plays music all the time.
Oh, Pandera, Spotify,
The one at YouTube.
YouTube. Okay.
And you know, at my age, I hate technology. Every time I get a phone and get used to it, they take it away. It's been good.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Cunningham. Blessings to you.
Sorry I was so long-winded.
No. We enjoyed you. Thank you so much. Take care.
You too.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them.
Okay, so that is our final guest for this evening. I surely hope that you all enjoyed the lineup. We've had some very good insight and some good views of what's been going on from three men from three different generations. And we've had some awesome, encouraging words for us as we continue forward with trying to promote change and moving forward in our nation. Well, Cheryl, it's time for winners of the, what do we have? Two $15 Walmart gift cards. Two $15 Walmart gift cards. So who are our winners, Cheryl?
Our winners are Darla Hoffman from YouTube and Leslie Lee from Facebook.
Congratulations, Darla Hoffman and Leslie Lee. All right, so we're going to get your information, and I'm going to be sending you a $15 gift card. Let's do some accolades. First, I want to thank Minister Cameron Barnes of Operation Push. Thank you so much, Cameron, for hanging out with us today. Also, we want to thank Pastor Matthew Lee from Memphis Metro Church. Thank you so much, Pastor Matt. God bless you. And finally, we want to definitely thank the president of the NAACP Edwardsville branch, Mr. John Cunningham. All right. And then we don't want to forget about our credits for the videos that we played tonight to kind of put a little spice in our show. We want to give our credits. And then I want to remind you about Father's Day is this month. Father's Day is this month. We are going to be giving out live shout outs on the Friday before Father's Day, which is June the 19th. And we're also going to be giving away giveaways specifically for males. So if you have a shout out that you want to give to your father, whether he's in heaven or still living, make sure you start leaving the comments so that I can collect those and we can start giving shout outs on June the 19th. Also, next week, we're going to be back to our regular setup. We have saxophonist Cameron Ross is going to be in the house next week. Cameron Ross is going to be in the house. And our business spotlight is going to be Charlene Blair of the National Museum of African Americans on Stamps. That's next Friday. Same time, same channel. You don't want to miss it. And I also want to give a shout out to my daughter, Cheryl. She had a little bit extra to do with the videos and more guests. And I just want to say she did a magnificent job. Didn't she? I'm training her, y'all. She did a magnificent job. Well done, Cheryl. You want to give a few shout outs before we get out of here?
I just want to say thank you for everyone coming out and just being with us.
All right.
It's a rough time.
Yes, it is. No shout. You want specific people on the feed?
Just all my family: Gigi, Grandma, Auntie Phoenicia, Auntie Karen, Darla, Lady Jackson, Carmen. We have so many people here today. We have Deborah. We have Olga. We have Earlsine, Pauline, Valerie.
Hey.
Charmaine.
Hey, Charmaine.
We have Miss Tina.
Hey, Tina.
I think that's it. Kayla Johnson.
Hi, Kayla. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed the show and you got something positive or inspiring out of it. And who knows, we may have to maybe continue to do this because the struggle is not over yet. So we may, from time to time, continue to do this until we see some results. How about that? Any more?
Miss Leslie.
Miss Leslie. Hi, Miss Leslie. Congratulations. I got that gift card coming to you.
Auntie Ada's here again.
Hi, Auntie Ada Foster in Kansas. You said hi to your Gigi?
Yes, I did. Hey, Gigi.
Grandma's in the house. All right. Okay, so we're going to end it. We're sorry it's a little late, but I wanted to make sure this was a very sensitive subject, and I wanted to make sure that all of the guests had their time to express themselves, and I didn't want to rush it. So thank you for staying with us for the entire broadcast. You all have a safe week, and I'll see you next, I was about to say next Saturday. Next Friday, same time, right here. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.